Hey there, and welcome to this week's episode of the Australian Small Business Show. Matt, how are you?
Hello, Christy Lee. How are you today?
I am great. Today, we're doing a bit of a follow-up discussion on last week's episode. If you haven't listened to last week's episode, we interviewed author Kate Toon about her brand new book, Six Figures in Sales. And we got into a bit of the, I guess, transaction point between sales and marketing in that conversation and the difference between the two. We thought that was a really good, I guess, leaping off point for this conversation about sales versus marketing, what's the difference, why you need both. And we've had some recent experience about, just people leaving money on the table by not asking for the sale.
Yeah, and it's important because small business owners are both, right? So you can't just do one in your business unless you got some external person doing the
Doing
other
the
one.
other.
But most of us are doing the whole thing. And I often when you talk to a small business owner, they don't really understand what the difference is in terms of, attracting customers to your business. That's really hard. And we know
Mm,
that's really hard.
yep.
So why make it even harder by not knowing how to, get them over the line?
Yeah. So that's probably a really good starting point. So what's marketing? How do you define marketing? And let's just lay it out there. Neither Matt or I are marketing agency owners or marketing experts or sales experts, but we own small businesses, right? And we've had to
Yep.
both market and sell. And you did spend a considerable period of time as a business development manager. And
Yes.
my first job in recruitment was basically a sales manager. So we've been around the traps long enough to know know a little bit.
Yeah. And as I said last week, I think all small business owners have to be BDMs in some form. You've got to know how to do it. But to your question, marketing for me is just about, you know, building that list, building an audience, getting a following, getting people to know what you do,
Hmm.
getting to know your brand. So all these little words we talk about branding and and lead generation. I know you say maybe some of our listeners don't know what that is, but essentially it's attracting people into your world so you can then sell your service or your product to them. But
Yeah. So
marketing's
market,
for me, it's the
go on.
hardest part.
Mm. Do you think it's the hardest part?
Well, it is for me. So the marketing's the hardest part for me. And I think at the moment things are changing so quickly. So what was working 12 months ago is certainly not working right now. So
Oh no.
we're having to really think about it. I was reading an article last week as I was putting together our newsletter for this week, and I was reading about what AI has done to content creation and content marketing
Mm.
where we used to be able to and putting together a website. You put together a website, you set up a Facebook or an Instagram or maybe both, a LinkedIn profile, and you kind of go, right, I'm going to be consistent. I'm going to do 3 posts a week. I don't really think too much about it. I've got this website that I built 2 years ago. I haven't gone in and changed any of the
Mm.
text, but that was okay 5 years ago.
Yeah.
You could
It's
get
not
away.
okay now.
You could get away with being average.
Mm.
What AI is doing, it's taking away that middle,
Mm.
whereas you're either bad or you're
Mm.
really good. So that means your marketing, if you've been sitting on it thinking, I'll just do a bit and that'll be okay, that's not okay. That's not enough anymore.
No. So marketing is all the activities that we do to get people to know who we are, to build credibility of our brand, to get our brand out there, to get people considering buying from us. And there's a lot, like that's a lot that, we're not going to cover on all the things in this
No,
episode, but there's a huge amount in marketing. And, years ago it was, well, do I have to do all the things? Now you 100% have to do all the things. And then some, as you said, with the, increase in AI activity. So then what is sales? Sales is the bit really where we invite someone to work with us and secure them as a customer. That is the sale, right?
yeah, well, I think if you think about marketing, bringing someone into your world in terms of, whether you get their email address or they might have given their email address to 4 different things. If they've got a
Mm,
problem they need to solve, they might be reaching out, getting quotes. They might be, they might talk to 5 different people that do what you do.
mm,
So for me, getting them from that position to becoming a customer of yours, and I always say that too, and beyond that too, you want them to become an
mm.
advocate of your business and a referrer and things like that. So for me, that part of convincing them with all the options they've got available that what your service and what your product can provide is a solution to their problem.
Yeah. And I think the word you use there is the exact reason that most small business owners hate sales. convincing them.
If
And
you
I look at sales differently now than I used to for this
Yep,
very reason, because sales can feel to a lot of people that don't, do this naturally, it can feel pushy, it can feel icky. You don't want to
yep.
sort of sell yourself, so to speak. And that convincing someone to use you over someone else, that's the part that turns most small business owners, I think, away from sales. And I think that's why it's important to, look at it another way. It's you're offering someone the opportunity to get their problem solved and
Yep.
for you to be the solution to getting that problem solved. They may not take you up on that offer, but if you're not making the offer, you can't make the sale.
Yeah, and I think part of the sales process too is I've always framed it as that my what I'm doing is I'm actually helping somebody, no matter
Yeah.
what role I'm doing, what business I've had, it's all about I'm helping that person. And if that person thinks that somebody else's product or service is going to help them better, that's great. And this is a really important part of the sales process. And that's why some people, think of sales like they do like a used car salesman or something that it's at that point people get a little bit aggressive in terms of the sale if they think they're going
Yeah.
to lose. I think one of the best things you can learn as a small business owner is know what you do and know what you do well.
Mm,
And there's going to be other people that do what you do well as well.
of
So
course.
sometimes someone's going to choose, might be for whatever reason, personality or whether they don't choose your service. But the sale still goes on after that point because they may go off and use a service the same as yours, and it might not be what they expect. You want
Hmm.
them to be able to come back into your world, not feel like you've, bashed them over the head for the next 3 weeks after they've made the decision as well. So there's parts of the sales process I think that are ongoing, not just during that moment.
Absolutely. And then beyond that, of course, we've got, customer service, retention, delivery of the product or service. Like, as you said, you ultimately want the people that you make the sale to become your repeat business, repeat customers, loyal advocates of your business. So if we look at, this is a very basic take on this, but if we look at marketing as everything we do to get people to consider purchasing from us, and sales is everything we do from consideration through to conversion and continuation, that's really the difference between the two activities. But you cannot do one without the other because you're not going to make any sales if no one knows about you and you haven't built that credibility. And I would say building authority and credibility in the land of AI is more important now than it has ever been.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people are searching on their AI tools for answers to things. But the very next thing they're doing, and I do this myself, so I know it's from my own behavior just as much as anything, is they go to Google to try and get the real source of the information, hopefully your website, so
Yeah.
that they can check you out and make sure you're legit and you're not an AI bot and that you are experienced in helping them. So I think both are super important, but I think a lot of people get very busy marketing and forget to sell, or a lot of people get to the sale and just don't know how to do it, or they leave money on the table. Like we've had
Yeah.
this experience recently, right?
Absolutely. We were house hunting. We were looking at houses to help us,
We're doing
get
some
out,
market research, is what we're
doing
doing
some
about
to
our.
market research. And you tell the story. I think you know the story a little bit better than I do.
Well, I was disclosing to an agent in our area that we were considering a reshuffle of our property portfolio in the next, like not immediately, in the next year or two. And we were discussing having an agent look at it well ahead of time, about any changes we might want to make. And she asked where we lived. She knew the exact house. She knew the street. She described the street in detail. She definitely knew where we were. And about 2 days later, there was a brochure with a beautiful blue bow in our
Nice,
letterbox. And
nice
I
brochure.
thought,
Yeah.
lovely brochure. And I thought, smart, that I expected to be followed up by any of the
Yeah.
agents we spoke to that day because we saw a number of properties. And not one of them followed up with anything personalized. They were all taking notes. I watched them and I thought, oh, she's smart. She's going to follow up. There was a brochure with a beautiful blue bow and a generic letter that wasn't even
Yeah.
personalized, that didn't say it was lovely to meet you at this property. When you're ready, let me know and I'll come through
Oh,
and have a
and
look
and
for
we'd
you.
we'd actually said we were looking for people to come to the house.
Oh, we spoon fed the information.
She didn't need to do any marketing at all. Straight into the sale. We were, if
And
you'd
if
have,
she sent me that, like if she'd attached that personal letter, I would have contacted her and said, yeah, why don't you come and have a look? Like, we're not ready to do
yeah,
anything yet. Like, but absolutely, it would have moved her closer to making that sale to list a property for us in the future. So I think there's just little things that we just don't do that are not that hard. I was on a call with my mastermind group earlier today, and we were talking about one of my products and services. And why don't I have many people in that program? Oh, because I don't tell anyone around about it and I haven't promoted it. Duh. So,
Yeah,
we've got to remember
well, you say
this.
that to me all the time. I'm someone who I rely heavily on referrals, and I always have. I
Mm.
always feel like, marketing. I find overwhelming, particularly at the moment. I said before, we're having to do more and more, and there's more and more stuff. You're seeing more and more. It just feels very overwhelming to me. Whereas I like to put those hours into managing a relationship or managing 10 relationships.
But
That
that's just a form of marketing.
that's a different form of marketing.
Yeah.
So that's where I like to put my attention in terms of the market. And look, to that, we talked about that girl who didn't, come to the house and start selling to us. It could have been a number of reasons. Maybe she was someone that, felt like was scared of that selling process, or scared of being seen as somebody um, that comments. I think I recall during that visit that I may have said, take her mobile number so I don't have to get all the phone calls. But
But it would have been so simple for her to just make that letter personalized. That
yeah.
would have stepped her towards a sale, 100%.
Well, that's
And
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
so it's the
exactly right.
simple
So,
things.
so the selling process is not just one thing, too. That's a good point. That there's a series of things. There used to be the old, you know, touch points. When you first
Yeah.
got into sales, they say you've got to do 10 touch points, and then you'll definitely get the sale.
I'm having horrendous flashbacks to my early recruitment days and my stats forms and the number
For
of calls I had to make every day.
every 10 phone calls, you get one meeting. So there was all
Yep.
this around it. And it's interesting that if you think about how it's changed, like marketing has certainly taken a bigger role for a small business owner than it did previously, where maybe you were reliant on, paper advertising. Before social media, it must have been really difficult. That's where, it was the age of the cold calling.
Well, and
That's
I remember back in when I first started my business and social media wasn't a thing, I would hand deliver gifts to businesses
Yep.
all over my target area with little chocolates and a business card and a little brochure explaining what I did. That's how we marketed back then. Would I do
Yep.
that now? Absolutely not.
Well,
But am I
actually,
investing money in other forms of marketing? 100%.
I think where it's going to land is for the marketing and with AI is that we're going to be having to bring a little bit of that back in terms of that personal approach. And I did read an article talking about how the sweet spot is getting being able to target large groups but more personally, and that's how we're going to
Yep.
be able to compete with AI in terms of that space. So
Yeah.
working out how you can hit a large group, but also be personalized, which is what if you look at the results you get in AI, they're very generic. And look, we know that for some of the part, they're not right.
Oh no, I've had arguments with ChatGPT, which was absolutely incorrect about a legislation issue. And if one of my members had looked at that, they would have been 1,000% convinced ChatGPT was
Yeah.
right, and it was 100% wrong. So
Well,
it's definitely not reliable in itself, but it is now feeding up other people's source content to
that's
back
right.
itself up, and that's where we need to be found, which is the next challenge we've all got as small business marketers. But I think, I guess to summarize what we're talking about today, because we could take this conversation right in,
Yeah.
in 10 different directions and we might do some deep dives on all of these areas in the future. But as a small business owner, sales and marketing are two different things and you need to understand that, but you need to do both and they both need to talk to each other and there's no point doing this marketing that then has a sales process attached to it which is totally different and doesn't align and doesn't flow because that's
Yep.
going to erode all that trust you've just built in your marketing.
Yeah, but that's both ways too. It could be a sales process that gets overwhelmed, that you
Mm,
can't keep up and it looks like you don't want the business, or
yep.
it could be a sales process that doesn't exist. That you've got all these leads coming through and it's like, oh, I
No
don't
way to
get
convert them.
that's
Yeah.
right. You don't know how to convert them.
Mm. So there's a lot to think about there. Listeners, if you've got a question about sales or marketing and that you'd like us to talk about in another episode, find us on socials and let us know and reach out to us. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter because we do share tips following each episode in the next week's newsletter that we don't share here on the
Yep.
podcast. So you get some extra
So
juice in there.
yeah, what happens is that we start recording and Christy and I keep talking.
And we come up with all sorts of interesting stuff. And Matt loves sharing a stat in his newsletter too. So you want to subscribe to get some real live data there. So you can just head over to the australiansmallbusinessshow.com.au and subscribe to the newsletter there. And come and find us on the socials. Let us know what you'd love to hear about so that we can make sure we're recording episodes that are just what you need.
Awesome. Thanks, Christy Lee.
Thanks, Matt.